Imagine a high-tech agricultural laboratory where scientists in stark white coats are meticulously extracting drops of plant growth hormones, sealing them into gleaming bottles and pushing them to market at the cost of tens or even hundreds of dollars. The modern world often clings to the belief that the prosperity of a garden must be purchased from such massive research facilities. But what if I told you that the greatest biological power, an elixir capable of awakening fierce new shoots and stimulating staggering root growth, is quietly resting inside a rustic wooden bucket in the corner of a natural farmer's yard? It requires only a few gallons of rainwater, a humble potato, a pinch of raw sea salt, a handful of woodland leaf mold, and a patient wait of 48 hours. No need for roaring factories, no complex extraction pipelines. That wooden bucket is a flawless biological machine. It is naturally cloning billions of invisible life forms, organically synthesizing 6 distinct plant hormones, and carrying a magnificent restorative power that eclipses the bottled solutions on supermarket shelves. The academic world calls these miraculous compounds phytohormones. The agricultural science industry labels them growth regulators. But to traditional farmers who hold a profound reverence for Mother Earth, they are simply known as indigenous microorganisms, IMO. Today we will take a step back, learning to lessen our reliance on costly commercial products and discovering how to forge life with our own hands from the most primal of ingredients. If you have ever stood hesitantly in the aisle of a garden supply store, staring at complex labels like microbial inoculant, mycorrhizal complex, or soil probiotics, wondering if they truly deliver the miracles they promise, the biological curtain is about to be lifted. The precious liquid within those plastic bottles was fundamentally inspired by deep natural principles. The microbes you are seeking to buy have actually been living and breathing steadily beneath the decaying blanket of the woods, just steps from your home. They are thriving at the base of every healthy tree on this planet. For centuries, many ancient indigenous agrarian traditions have understood how to gather them, propagate them, and return them to their gardens with absolute autonomy. Commercial models have simply packaged that life into convenient bags, but in truth, you can entirely learn to cultivate them in abundant quantities right in your own backyard. To truly comprehend this patient and quiet stillness, let us return to the 1960s. As the Green Revolution erupted, bringing a massive influx of synthetic fertilizers and mechanized plows, millions of farmers worldwide were swept into the frantic pursuit of maximum yield. In the early years, fields supplemented with artificial nutrients produced soaring harvests. But that state demanded relentless, exhausting maintenance. Over time, deprived of organic matter replenishment, the earth lost its friable texture, turning hard and calloused, and the crops grew dependent on ever-increasing doses of chemical support. Amidst that hurried whirlwind, the Amish community calmly maintained its own rhythm. Guided by the philosophy of Gelassenheit, graceful yielding and stepping back before nature, they upheld circular farming methods and turned their reverent gaze toward the old-growth forest. They observed that beneath the fallen canopy of the ancient woods, the soil is always soft, pitch black, and drenched in the soothing, earthy scent of leaf mold. No one has ever scattered synthetic fertilizer or dragged a hose to water that forest floor. Yet the oak and maple trees continue to stand tall and majestic, sprouting new life century after century. The forest architects its own fertility from sunlight, morning dew, fallen leaves, and the silent labor of subterranean microbes. This profound agrarian philosophy recognizes a core truth. Healthy soil is not a collection of inert minerals. Healthy soil is a vibrant, living ecosystem guided by microorganisms. If you gather those indigenous microbes from the forest, tenderly propagate them, and shower them over your vegetable beds, you are bringing the unbridled life force of the ancient woods directly into your garden. The most beautiful aspect is that while traditional farmers were quietly sustaining the art of microbiology through ancestral wisdom, modern science began unearthing the puzzle pieces to decode that very miracle. In 1941, two American researchers from the USDA published a remarkable report. When they extracted natural compounds from corn pollen and applied them to other crops, those plants surged upward with staggering vigor. Yet the biological mechanism behind it remained a mystery, forgotten for nearly 30 years. It was not until 1970 that the scientific community returned to investigate successfully refining the compound from rapeseed pollen. Finally, in 1979, after patiently processing hundreds of kilograms of pollen merely to yield 4 milligrams of pure extract, they crystallized the core molecule and named it brassinosteroid. Crystallographic analysis completely shifted the botanical world when it confirmed that plants possess their own steroid hormones, just like the animal kingdom. This miraculous class of hormones orchestrates everything from cell elongation and fine root branching to photosynthesis and the resilience to survive the most brutal droughts and killing frosts. The breathtaking intersection of science and rustic wisdom lies exactly here. In-depth microbiological studies in the 2000s confirmed that the gentle aerobic bacteria thriving beneath the forest humus, such as Bacillus pseudomonas or Azospirillum, are the natural factories producing these phytohormones. For hundreds of millions of years, long before humanity knew how to identify a molecule, these microbial communities have tirelessly secreted growth hormones, naturally providing for the roots in every forest on Earth. When you marry the Amish philosophy of revering Mother Earth with the traditional art of culturing indigenous microbes, you are not merely propagating leaf-decaying bacteria. You are engineering a primal biological reactor. You provide boiled potatoes as a sweet, starchy fuel, raw sea salt as an osmotic balancer, and a handful of forest soil as the starter culture. In 48 hours of quiet stillness, the microbial population multiplies exponentially, consuming the potato sugars and secreting an array of growth hormones, vitamins, and organic acids in abundant concentrations to nourish the earth. Dear friend, as we allow our souls to drift together into the miracles hidden within a handful of friable earth, perhaps you too are feeling a soothing calm wash over your mind. Learning to tenderly nurture life with your own hands, to reclaim autonomy in your very own garden, is not just an agricultural technique. It is a journey to slow the rush, a return to freedom, and a purification of the soul. If you are someone yearning for a self-sufficient life, wishing to cultivate a pristine garden for your homestead with your own hands, then we are walking the same tranquil path. Please take a peaceful moment to gently press the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your rustic, shared comments about the young shoots emerging in the corner of your garden are the warmest fire, giving me the energy to continue wandering and sharing age-old ecological philosophies, returning the heirloom seeds of understanding safely back into your hands. Now, let us roll up our sleeves and perform this ritual of awakening the earth. The entire preparation takes exactly 5 minutes. Find a clean plastic bucket or a wooden barrel holding about 5 gallons. Avoid using metal buckets, as metal hinders microbial activity and is easily corroded by the natural fermentation environment. Next, you will need about 4 gallons of pure water. Rainwater is the sky's most magnificent gift, carrying precious trace minerals. If you must use tap water, draw it into a large basin and let it sit under the sun for 24 hours to allow the chlorine to evaporate entirely. Otherwise, it will unintentionally harm the bacteria the moment they bloom. The nourishment to fuel this machine is incredibly humble, about a pound of fresh potatoes. You do not need to peel them. Simply wash away the mud, chop them, and boil them until they are beautifully soft. The potato starch is the most abundant, friendly carbohydrate fuel for the microbes to multiply. Next, measure out 2 tablespoons of coarse, unrefined sea salt. Remember, prioritize coarse sea salt over refined table salt. Raw sea salt carries dozens of oceanic trace minerals, helping to balance the osmotic pressure within the water and supporting the growth of beneficial microbes, crafting the perfect sanctuary for life to flourish. And finally, the soul of the bucket, a handful of forest earth. Take an afternoon to stroll into an old-growth deciduous forest near your home. Use your hands to gently brush aside the dry surface leaves and gather about 2 cups of dark, friable leaf mold where tiny white fungal threads are woven through, carrying the fragrant, earthy scent of the woods after a rain. That is the primal starter culture holding billions of indigenous lives. Place the soft, boiled potatoes into a clean mesh bag and crush them into a paste. Place the forest soil into another mesh bag. Suspend both bags in the bucket of rainwater. Dissolve the coarse sea salt and stir with a gentle grace. Set the bucket in a shaded, quiet corner of the porch where the temperature rests calmly around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 degrees Celsius. Loosely drape a thin cloth over the rim to keep insects from falling in, while still allowing oxygen to flow softly and the fermentation bubbles to escape. That is the sum of your labor. The rest will be miraculously taken over by nature. After the first 12 hours, the aerobic bacterial population begins to awaken. By the 24th hour, you will observe tiny bubbles rising to the surface of the water. And when you reach the 48 or 72-hour mark, depending on the warmth, the surface of the bucket will be crowned with a thick, frothy foam, looking exactly like a breathing, pulsing layer of yeast. That foam is the silent language of creation, signaling that the microbial population has reached its peak vitality. Your brewed tea is now teeming with life, overflowing with growth nutrients, and perfectly ready to be returned to Mother Earth. The application of this elixir is equally tender. You must never drench young plants directly with this concentrated brew. Dilute it at a ratio of 1 part solution to 10 parts clean water. Generously drench the earth surrounding the roots in the gathering dusk, roughly once every 2 to 3 weeks. These microbes will instantly weave themselves into the loam, re-establishing the ancient trade network with the roots, and seamlessly continuing the growth process right where they land. Over time, your soil will gradually turn pitch black, loose and friable, crumbling softly in your hands like used coffee grounds. Stubborn, compacted beds will find their breath again, retaining water beautifully, and your crops will rise resiliently against the shifting weather, forging a naturally robust ecosystem. Of course, understanding nature always requires us to recognize boundaries. This microbial elixir is a magnificent supportive remedy, but it is not the sole solution. Microbes require sustenance, meaning organic matter or carbon, to endure long term. If you pour this brew onto a barren patch of dry sand, devoid of any straw mulch or aged compost, those tiny microbes will struggle to survive. Furthermore, the biological engine in the bucket is a living, breathing ecosystem. It cannot be bottled and left on a shelf for months on end. You should utilize this solution within 1 to 2 weeks before the soothing, earthy scent transitions into a state of foul, anaerobic decay. The law of natural abundance is profoundly simple. You brew it, you bathe the garden in it, and you quietly begin a new cycle. That brief shelf life is precisely why this method rarely graces commercial shelves, for it is entirely unsuitable for packaging and long-term storage. Instead of believing that ecology is a science too complex and costly to grasp, the Amish and thousands of traditional farmers across the world have patiently proven the exact opposite. The most magnificent soil-restoring nourishment on this planet does not have to be locked behind commercial barriers. It is organically multiplying right beneath the fallen leaves of the forest near your home. It can be gathered with a gentle spade, awakened in a rustic wooden bucket, and applied with a heart full of deep gratitude. The only barrier standing between you and a garden overflowing with vitality is, in truth, merely a quiet walk into the woods and a few minutes of tranquil preparation. Nature, with all her boundless grace, is always there, simply waiting for us to return and learn with a humble heart.